Okay, that judges all of us.
This is Sportscentre.
Hey, I'm Marissa Bruno. We're just one day away from the NHL draft, and it sure seems like there's going to be a lot of player movement between now and when the first round ends tomorrow. We saw some of that movement just after we posted the show yesterday, as Taylor Hall was dealt to Chicago. Hall had a limited no-trade clause, but the Blackhawks weren't on the list of 16 teams, so this deal was much easier to complete. Now, Nick Foligno was also part of that trade, and earlier today he agreed to a one-year deal with the Blackhawks for $4 million. As for the why, the Bruins are reportedly clearing cap space to try and re-sign pending UFA Tyler Bertuzzi, who they acquired at the deadline. For Chicago gives them a former MVP to play with the most hyped first overall pick since Connor McDavid. And over his career, Hall has had more than enough experience doing just that. And it seems like if you have Taylor Hall, you also have the first overall pick. In 2019, he was drafted first overall, and then played with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Neil Yakupov, and McDavid, all first overall picks. He was then in Jersey for the Hischier and Hughes picks, and now in the Windy City for Bedard, which is a pretty wild track record and one of the most obscure stats I've ever seen. It'll probably suck going from contending for a cup to a rebuild though. But it could be a faster rebuild though with both he and Bedard in the fold. A franchise not rebuilding is the LA Kings. As we told you yesterday, they are still looking to acquire Pierre-Luc Dubois. But apparently the Habs still aren't giving up on bringing PLD home. As per Darren Dreger, the Jets want NHL-ready players, something the Kings have a lot of, and something Montreal can't really give up. So at the moment that puts LA in the driver's seat. But this thing is moving fast, so we wouldn't be surprised if the trade is done by tomorrow's draft. With Dreger saying the Kings and Dubois are talking extension, and it could be a Winnipeg sign-and-trade, which could be tricky, needing it to work for both teams' caps for the brief time he's a Jet before officially being traded. And speaking of superstars potentially on the move, according to our own Pierre LeBrun, Seattle, Toronto, and Carolina are among several teams that have talked to San Jose about Erik Karlsson. Erik Karlsson? A bud? Potentially? No, don't get my hopes up, okay? Well, I don't like that. And sticking with the Leafs, GM Brad Treliving spoke to the media just moments ago and confirmed Sheldon Keefe will return as Leafs head coach. And finally, we end with Torrey Krug. There's no news on a trade, but if he is dealt, his former teammate David Pastrnak really wants him back in Boston, as he retweeted a tweet that said, "Bring Torrey home," with some of his best highlights. Krug spent the first 9 seasons of his career in Boston. It would be quite the reunion if he came back. I just want Pasta to get everything he wants in this world, you know? He just seems like that kind of guy, like he deserves it. To baseball, and the Jays are back in action after having Monday off. And in what has been a very up and down season, Toronto seems to finally be settling in and hitting a nice groove. They took 2 of 3 from Oakland this past weekend and have won 4 of their last 5. And the bats have been a huge part of that. During that stretch, the Jays had the 6th most runs scored, 5th best average, and 5th best OPS. But oddly enough, not much is coming from the long ball, as they only have 6 home runs in that stretch. Despite their recent success, the Jays are still sitting 4th in the AL East, but only a half game behind the Yanks for 3rd. Realistically though, the division is a lost cause anyway, because of how good Tampa has been, as Toronto's path to the playoffs is surely the wild card, where they currently hold the 3rd spot, a half game up on the Astros and Angels. The Jays start a 3-game set with the Giants tonight, and the way this year's going, that's a good thing, because versus American League East opponents, the Jays are just 7-17 this season. But all other teams, they're absolutely crushing, going 36-19. Back to hockey, and the wait is almost over, as we're just a day away from the NHL draft in Nashville. And we've known for what seems like forever, Connor Bedard will be the first overall pick tomorrow night. He's been on our radar pretty much since March of 2020, when as a 14-year-old kid, the WHL had announced he had been granted exceptional status, which allowed him to enter the WHL on a full-time basis, a year earlier than most prospects. But how have other players who have been granted exceptional status fared in the NHL? Since the rule was created in 2005, Bedard became only the 7th player to be granted exceptional status in CHL history and the 1st in the WHL. But recent history suggests that being granted this status doesn't always correlate with NHL success, as there's a big difference between the first 3 guys on this list and the next 3. The first 3 guys on this list, John Tavares, Aaron Ekblad, Connor McDavid, and they've combined for over 2,000 points and games played. They also have many All-Star appearances, and yeah, that Connor McDavid guy, he just won another Hart Trophy yesterday. The most recent 3, however, though, have only combined for 38 points and 162 games, with Sean Day having played only 2 career games. But let's give the caveat that the first 3 are a lot older and have had plenty of time to get those games and points in. And when one of the names on the list is Connor McDavid, it's going to be tough to compete. Of the most recent 3, Shane Wright was just drafted last season. The 4th overall pick only played 8 games in his rookie season with Seattle, putting up a goal and an assist. So it would be pretty harsh to judge him on just 1 season. Minor hockey success does not always guarantee a promising NHL career, but with Bedard, it probably does. Okay, this past weekend was a busy one for me, as I went to my first ever AEW event. The toy company that makes the AEW toys, Jazzwares, took me out. I got to go backstage. Anyway, you know what? I'm not going to spoil it. You're going to learn with me in this edition of Roberto on the Go. You guys want to go see some wrestling? Going to my very first AEW event right now with my friend Spencer. Adorable. Guys, I'm going to sit in the broadcast booth. I guess it's more like broadcast desk, but it is ringside. She's a bad girl. You gonna make them kiss? Okay. We're just waiting backstage. This is the media room where all the stars roll through. They have a little background, a little step and repeat action with all the lights and Darby Allin. Then I had a little time to kill before the show. I've never seen a lineup like this for merch before. Merch line. Seriously, I have been to Taylor Swift concerts. I've never seen a lineup like this. This line wraps around half of the Scotiabank Arena. Decided against the merch. We did have our action figures, and it was time for the show to begin, and these guys go crazy. The Chris Jericho entertainment value alone is enough to get me coming back. But the cherry on top was the Christian Cage Leaf Chirps. That's all for today. We'll see you back in tomorrow. 3 Eastern, no Pacific. Have a good one.